It hasn't clicked on yet on YouTube.
Okay,
Says, yes, we are live. There's a message from NCTV.
right. But Arthur said it's not on YouTube.
Just started.
Okay.
Yep, it's on.
All right, let's go. Welcome to the meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission for May 12th of 2020. Before we begin the meeting, I need to share some information with everybody. It's a little long, please bear with me. As a preliminary matter, I'm Daniel Drake, Chairman of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Arthur Gasparo,
Yes.
Jeanette Topham,
Yes.
Tony Buscarin,
Here.
Andrea Planzer.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tom Rafter,
Here,
Noah Carberg,
Here.
Jamie Sansberry,
Here.
Katie Perales. There are no
Here.
anticipated outside speakers in attendance because there are none on the agenda. This open meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is convening by video conference using the Zoom app and broadcasting on the Town of Nantucket YouTube video channel. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided to members of this body and which have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda, but before we do, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to assure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Sorry. For any response, please wait until the chair yields to you and to state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. Staff will activate the chat feature on YouTube. Members of the public who have comments or questions can use this feature to communicate with the public body. Instructions are on the town's website. The chair and our staff will do their best to address the questions and comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Thank you. All right, let's begin. Are there any comments or questions on the agenda?
No.
Hearing none, it's adopted. Are there any comments on the draft minutes from the April 14th meeting, or is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Topham. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Planzer. How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin? Mr. Buscarin, how do you vote? You need to unmute.
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. May I have a motion, please, to ratify the warrants of April 15th, 2020 and April 29th, 2020?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Topham. Is there a
Second.
Mr. Buscarin, do you second?
Second, yes.
Thank you. How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. Pending leases and contracts as set forth in Exhibit 1. Mr. Rafter, would you like to comment?
Sure. We have a number of them on here tonight. The first group, though, that is highlighted is pending. They're all of the seasonal airline agreements, and they're pending, awaiting further notice from them as to exactly when they're planning to start and what their schedules will be. After that, we have 4 license agreements, a standard $1,500 business fee for each one of those. That is a Taste of Nantucket for catering, Form Bar Fitness, beach license agreement at Novadear Beach, Jet East Corporate Aviation for aircraft maintenance, and Tradewind Aviation LLC for their 135 operation. Next we have is a contract amendment for E1. There's no dollar amount. It's an extension of the date for expiration. They have to modify one more piece of our, one more vehicle that we have to fit the cart. We also have a contract amendment for Johnson Controls Fire Protection. Again, no cost, but a continuation of the expiration agreement. And then we have a contract amendment with GMSTEK LLC. That was for 3 mobile credit devices to limit the interaction with the public from our FBO point of sale. We then have 2 contracts with Jacobs. The first is for $43,986. That is for the removal of the existing harbor piles at Great Harbor Yacht Club. The next is another contract for $23,309, and that is for the stormwater inventory assessment and maintenance plan. The next is still pending. That's the Gray Wall or Viochi contract, so we won't be voting on that tonight. And we have a contract amendment with Jacobs for $6,800. That is the amendment for the pavement markings for their services. Because we are able to get state funding, we're able to add the add alternate back in and do the markings on runway 1230. We then have a contract with J.J. Cunningham LLC for $292,696. This is just an update for the commission. At your last meeting, you approved the amount of $290,696. Although in the agreement, the proper amount was reflected, and that is actually $292,696. So I don't know that we need action on that, but Katie just wanted to make everyone aware of that in full transparency. We then have a contract amendment to that same contract, J.J. Cunningham, for $30,624. As I mentioned, we got word from the state that they will fund 80% of that project, so that will allow us the ability to do the add alternate and do the markings for runway 1230.
Are there any questions?
I have a question. Can you explain what stormwater is, what we're talking about exactly?
It's essentially an inventory of all of our drainage system throughout the airport and best practices and maintenance schedule items, so that we can go around and when we, what frequencies we need to clean out, what drains and what inlets we have and what condition they're in. So we can then build a a plan if there's any replacement that's needed or anything else, and mainly a maintenance plan for our entire drainage system.
I wasn't sure if it included the statue park that we mentioned last month.
It will include wherever there's a inlet or drainage on the airport.
Okay, thank you, Mr. After.
Any other questions? Comments? All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the license agreements with A Taste of Nantucket, Form Barry Fitness, Jet East Corporate Aviation, Tradewind Aviation, the contract amendments with E1 Inc., Johnson Controls Fire Protection LP, GM STEK LLC, the contract with Jacobs, the second contract with Jacobs, the contract amendment with Jacobs, and the contract and contract amendment with JJ Cunningham LLC. Is there
So
such a mo-
moved.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Planzer. How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. All right, thank you, Mr. Rafter. Moving on to pending matters. The crew quarters development.
There's been no change in the crew quarters other than, as we discussed at our last meeting, we will not be transferring $300,000 into that account due to the budget constraints at this time.
And presumably will not be dealing with this in the near-term future.
Well, unless things change dramatically financially, I don't think so.
Okay. Town Government Study Committee.
I think this is directly related to the annual town meeting. We actually reached out to Mr. Brusher and, to see what the status was. And he said the irony is that we probably have to have a town meeting in order to change a town meeting. But there was a meeting held today, a joint meeting of the FinCom and Select Board, where they were discussing the town meeting and town election and what could be done. They're anticipating at next week's select board that they will have some decisions made. They were looking at the alternatives, and essentially what it came down to is it looks like the possibility of a very modified town meeting possibly occurring at the end of June to address the financial issues. And Mr. Turbot explained to the group that although ours is an additional appropriation, it's in order to get the grant funding for Security Part 2. So we have 3 items that are impacted by the delay of a town meeting. They are the Part 2, or the PFAS remediation issue, the Security Part 2, and the fuel farm. The fuel farm and the PFAS, Brian believes we have some internal solutions that we can use to address that. As it relates to the security project, the challenge there is that we need a FAA grant application. So they've extended their deadline to June 15th, but now if we're talking late June for the meeting, I had a conversation with him just a little while ago. He has some potential solutions that he's going to look into. One that he kicked around, and Jamie, I haven't had a chance to mention to you yet, the possibility of using some additional PFC money, since it's already, it's reimbursement, it's money that we've already done. So he's looking into different possibilities. I also wrote to Gail Luttrell from FAA explaining our situation and asked if we could have a conversation to discuss potential alternatives and solutions. So we're still working through that. I'm not panicking just yet, but I think we'll work something out on it.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Moving on, the next item is the Mass DOT ASMP Grant Award and associated grant assurances. This is for a grant of $607,100 for the second part of the safety and security equipment project.
Excuse me,
Do you have
Mr.
any
Chair.
comments, Mr. Rafter?
I think we missed item number 5, the CARES Act grant. Or do I have?
It's not on my agenda.
I think there was
Copy
a,
I have.
I think there was a second agenda sent out. It's a handout maybe?
Maybe
'Cause
there
it's on
was.
mine.
I missed it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay. If you don't mind, I'll go through that.
Okay.
We received the grant offer and just closed it out actually today for the CARES Act in the amount of $6,203,288. And as Jamie was saying earlier, she's going to be working with our consultant to get at least the first invoice and processing of that so that we can begin applying it to salary and wages. So that's some good news. I'm sorry, Dan. So if you want to
All
go.
right. Now, does anybody have any questions about that? Or comments? I think we're very fortunate. There are a couple of things we have to do. I guess the principal one that requires proactive effort on our part is to have a training program for airport employees on the evils of texting while driving. So be it.
Some unique assurances there.
All right, we'll go on to the ASMP grant award.
Yeah, so as the chairman explained, we received a grant for the safety and security project in the amount of $607,100. So I guess that's going to require action.
We have to accept it.
Yes.
Is there a motion to accept the ASMP grant from Mass DOT for $607,100?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Topham. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin. How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mrs. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Good, thank you. Next is the electric vehicle chargers for the parking lot.
Yes, we've been approached about a request from the town energy manager, Lawrence Sinatra, in conjunction, I believe, with National Grid to install it's 2 charging stations for electric vehicles in our parking lot. It's 1 pedestal with 2 units. It's in your packet. It has all the pictures, the layouts. They've given us the drawings, and we've asked for as-built if it does get approved for the electrical runs and things. So it looks like a good program. The electric chargers that we have over at the hangar are used primarily by Cape Air right now. But I think, and I'm going to defer any questions on this to Noah because he has much more knowledge on this one.
Are there any questions? I learned a new word and I can't remember what the word was, but it was the word for leakage of electricity when the units aren't in place. What was that? What's that word, Mr. Carberg?
Noah Carberg, Assistant Airport Manager. It's called parasitic load.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Well, everybody else knew that, but I didn't. Do we need to take any action on this, Mr. Rafter?
I think just approving it would be appropriate.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to, and there's no cost involved in the installation. There may be some continuing cost in terms of utilities. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the installation of the electric vehicle charging station in the parking lot as noted on the site plan that's with the material.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Planzer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Topham. Mr. Buscarin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. All right, Mr. Rafter, what are the financial impacts of all this, if any?
Well, it's better news than it was originally. At our last meeting, we just, for the FY20, we have some updated information on that. The revenues right now are anticipated to be, well, we initially anticipated a revenue drop of about 907,000. It looks like it's going to be more like 333,000 for a total revenue of 8.9 million, which previously was projected to be about 8.4. On the expense side, we're now looking at 282,000 as opposed to 143 for a total expense of 9.4 million. We initially thought it was going to be 9.5. So that results in a shortfall of about 451,156. And after we apply the 400,000 transfer from PFCs, it drops it down to a 51,156, which is much more manageable than what we were anticipating of up over 750,000. So it's right now, I guess it's looking a little better, but again, we still have this month, which is very challenging, and you'll see the drop in numbers when I report the GA traffic later on. But it's looking a little better than we initially anticipated, but still not very totally rosy yet. All other items remain the same, and on the 21 budget, as I mentioned, I think before, Jamie has come up with a very good, what I'll call model, where where she has outlined for revenue every line item month by month and what the anticipated percentage of prior year would be. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough time behind us and historic data to apply anything that's going to give us any, real significant heavy reliability. So we're waiting until we can, to the last minute, if you will, when we need the budget for ATM. And at that time, we'll refine it and just plug in the numbers. But I think without that CARES money, we'd be in a lot of trouble. We're hoping that we won't need the subsidy from the town. So that's a good thing. While I'm on finance, though, I'd like to request permission from the commission to waive the penalty for operating without an agreement for the seasonal airlines. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of uncertainty in what their plans are. I will give you a report later, but it literally is changing probably day by day or certainly week to week. But I'd like to at least, they're working with us, but I don't want to penalize them if they don't have the agreement in place and they all of a sudden decide to start operating. So
What is the penalty?
I believe it's $1,000. Does that sound right, Jamie or Noah?
I think that's correct, 1,000 or 1,500.
Any questions or comments from the commission? Is there a motion to waive the penalty for operating without an agreement for the seasonal operators for this season?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Topham. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. All right, Mr. Rafter, the manager's report.
On the project side of the house, security phase 1 work is moving right along. It's on schedule and completion date is June 26th. Phase 2, as I discussed earlier, we have some challenges with regard to the additional appropriation and town meeting, but we're working through those. The EA/EIS, the schedule for the draft EA/EIR is in your packet. PFC application number 2, air carrier coordination meeting was held on April 14th via Skype. Delta was the only airline that participated. No significant comments anticipated from the airlines. The airline comment period closes May 14th. Public comment period began on April 16th and concludes on May 18th. And just as a reminder, under application number 1, it goes through, I'm sorry, yeah, it's for $3.2 million. It goes through December 31st, 2010. We've already collected, I'm sorry, 3.2 has been collected and remaining 3.7 million yet to collect. And it's due to expire actually in 2024. Application 2 is for 1.1 million. Proposed effective date is May 1, 2024, with an expiration proposed on June 1st, 2029. Fuel farm rehab, we again need supplemental appropriation for that, but we're working with Brian on some internal fixes for it. Taxiway Echo, the bid was awarded to Lawrence Lynch. Grant application will be filed shortly, and FAA has notified us that the project is eligible for 100% FAA funding, which will save us about $1 million. The airfield markings, we awarded earlier JJ Cunningham, or we clarified and added the amendment. There is a bid protest to that from Highway Safety. Our attorneys are looking into it, and Noah's coordinating that, has a meeting with them tomorrow. That work, though, is scheduled to begin early in June. MassDOT, again, has informed us that they'll pay 80% of it, so that has allowed us to go on to the alternate work. MassDOT has also informed us that they have the money now for the crack sealing and seal coat project, which will also take place right around the same time. So typically where we'd be doing no work at all in June, we're now doing 2 projects together. And that's about a value of over $450,000 to us. They've also sent us today, late today, the contract for the foam test cart. So they've been extremely helpful funding projects for us. The only other project we had completed was a point of entry system for the Thompson House, and that is the PFAS. So we have a POET system installed at the Thompson House, and we'll be putting some seasonal employees in there. On the RFP and bid side of the house, the engineering RFQ, 5 firms submitted. We're in the process of interviewing firms and going through that review process. The planning RFQ, we've selected McFarland Johnson for that. We have a bid due in May 15th for the automated doors. The request for expression of interest is on hold for the hangar development in the on the freight side. Allies has identified that they are discontinuing their service because of economic reasons. I'm going to be trying to reach out to some folks to see what we can do to energize and try to get some freight moving back through here. And the post-screening concession opportunity bids were due in April 17th, but we did not receive any. And I should have started by reminding everyone the census, if you haven't filled it out, it's very short and very beneficial to our island. So if you can, please go to Census 2020. It's a very easy survey to fill out there. On the operations side of the house, under the lease payment, the deferral program, we have 10 tenants that have opted into the program. So it's a little less than we anticipated. The return to work program, our folks are all back to work. Some are working modified schedules due to some childcare situations. And we're looking to open the FBO to the public next week, assuming that we can get the signs in and change of flow and things of that nature.
Excuse me, Mr. Rafter, on the rent deferral
Yes.
program, can other tenants still opt into it, or are they foreclosed now?
Off the top of my head, Dan, I don't recall the deadline, but we did have a deadline to opt in. I think it may be closed.
Okay.
The FAA certification inspection, originally scheduled for May 27th through the 29th, has been postponed until further notice. On the air service side of the house, again, I'm going to give you an update as of last week. literally changes very quickly. JetBlue at this point in time will not be operating in June, even though their website has some flights on there. July is to be determined. American will operate their pre-COVID schedule June 19th to Labor Day. That's Philadelphia and Charlotte, 1 flight a day on Saturdays. LaGuardia, 1 flight daily. Washington National, 1 flight Monday through Thursday, 2 flights Friday, and 3 flights Saturday and Sunday. Delta will be flying Friday, Saturday, Sunday only, once daily, June 26th to Labor Day to LaGuardia. And United is doing something very different. It's Saturday only, 1 flight, June 6th through August 15th or the 22nd. And it's a interesting run. It originates in Dulles, Washington, Virginia area. Stops here, goes on to Bangor, but you can't get on from here to go to Bangor. They're just dropping people off. Comes back from Bangor and then picks people up here, and you can go back to Dulles. So that's what their current plan is. Any questions before I move on to statistics?
I thought on the, to comply with the CARES Act, they had to keep the city pairs. So United wouldn't be keeping the city pair. Is that accurate? Because they were Newark, weren't they?
They were in Newark, and I don't know the latest, but there was a change in, they petitioned it, they got shot down, and then there was some change, I think, to their petition. So I don't know the answer to that one, but I'll look into it, Andrea.
Okay.
There's also, Noah, what was the latest that just came out on the docket? It had to do with the airlines and their schedules. Do you recall? It just came out yesterday or today.
Noah Carberg, Assistant Airport Manager. The most recent docket that I saw was new ruling from the DOT that will allow airlines to drop up to 5 of their destinations or 5% of their scheduled destinations, whichever is higher.
It's interesting how that will be measured from their hubs or what, but so we will look into that though.
Excuse me, do you think those will change if the virus changes or whatever, or will they're in for solid for the season?
I wouldn't say anything solid just yet. Yeah, I think it, if for whatever reason Dulles or Bangor became a hotspot, that could change.
I also had another question, Mr. Rafter. I heard you say Lawrence Lynch. So they're coming now to the island to do work?
Yes, they've done work on the island before.
Right.
They will be coming to the island to do our taxiway echo job. They're looking at 2 different alternatives. One is to possibly set up a batch plant here on the airport, or use a local provider and bring the raw materials over and work through the local provider.
Okay, thank you.
They were what, something like $600,000 less than the next highest bidder?
It was significantly more. I wanted to say it was closer to, Dan, I'd have to look, but I thought it was about 6 million or more. It was a serious chunk of change.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. It was a very large chunk of change.
So again, they're reputable. FAA has worked with them. Our consultants have worked with them. They've done work on the island. So we can only hope that we'll get a great product out of them.
I hope so.
Okay, moving on to statistics. Again, this is April. March is not going to be good at all, but April's not so good either. Operations are down 9.45% over last March, up year to date 18.02. We were chugging along well until this hit. The GA ramp operations were down 57% in March, but also in your handout, NOAA has prepared an update that is very current. I believe it's through, I don't know the exact date, but through April, and you can see it's down 185% over last year for April. So April is going to be a tough month, and so is May. Our enplanements are down about 86% over last March. Year to date, up 3.23%. Cape Air saw a decrease of 49% in enplanements. Nantucket Air was down 26% or 132 passengers. Tradewind was down 67%, but that was only 6 passengers. For Boston, Cape Air had a 52% decrease or 473 passengers. New Bedford traffic was down 76% or 109. And overall, the Hyannis market was down 17% or 343 passengers. Vineyard was flat, 54 passengers. On the fuel side of the house, Jet A gallons sold for March were up 54% and year to date 2.35. For April, they were down 76.3% or 20,746 gallons. That's a hefty hit. Avgas was down 32.8% for March. Year to date, down 2.02. For April, they're down 37.62 or 2,475 gallons. March for freight was also down about 3% over last March and year to date down 1.7. And there were no noise complaints in March. Any questions on statistics? The only other report I have is on personnel. As I mentioned earlier, we're beginning to process seasonal personnel. They begin training next week. I believe we have 5 for line service coming in. We're cross-utilizing some of the FBO staff for gate guards and customer service representatives. We're going to be reviewing our telecommute remote work policy. And we had a resignation of a very talented maintenance employee, Matt Aguilar, left us. He's going over to the electric company. So we're going to be working to put out a notice to replace or backfill that position. And just one reminder that Noah will be handling this meeting next month. I will be out from June 4th for approximately 2 to 4 weeks for surgery and recovery. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Are there any comments or questions on the manager's report?
No, but I'd like to wish Mr. Rafter good luck on his surgery.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Are there any commissioners' comments? Mr. Gasparo, is there any public comment?
There is not.
There is not. All right. Moving on, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session, not to return to public session, to review minutes as enumerated on the agenda and the minutes of April 14th, 2020 for review and possible release. To discuss under clause 3 strategy with respect to the litigation regarding the Gatto claim, where the chair has determined that an open session may have detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. Also under clause C, to discuss strategy with respect to the litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. And under clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where the chair has determined that an open session may have detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the Airport Commission. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Planzer. Mr. Buscarin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you all.